This is interesting because we've talked about, it's like the mouse utopia or the rat utopia experiment. Basically, this dude put a bunch of mice in this big space and gave them all the food and water they could want, and then just left. Like, there you go, utopia, everything you'd ever want. And eventually, their society broke down. Some became aggressive. Some stopped procreating. There were some, they were called the beautiful ones. Shane Cashman wrote about this, beautiful ones of Universe 25. That they would just groom themselves all day and just make themselves look prettier and prettier.
But they won't mate. They're just obsessed with themselves.
They won't mate, but the male rats will still have sex.
Well, they would like all cluster in one room together. Like their social order broke down. They just stopped functioning properly, and then eventually they all died. And it sounds a lot like what we're seeing now. Like there is a limit to live and let live, I guess. Like obviously fascism is bad, okay? People need to have freedom and leeway to live their lives and be productive. But then if you get to the point where you're like, you literally don't care that adult entertainers are putting on children's shows, like adult entertainment for kids is bad, obviously. But the left, the liberals, they're cheering for it. It's like, okay, I think we're entering the rat utopia phase where our society ceases to exist. I guess the difference is we can see it and we know the results of these experiments. So I think worst case scenario, society breaks down completely. People become aggressive and start killing each other, which kind of seems like it's happening. And then preppers who are active, pay attention and read, build bunkers, ranches, and then humans are they end up fine in the long run.
Yeah.
We get through this.
I think you see people withdraw from society, right? I mean, you talk about this all the time, leaving cities. We know a lot of people who switched to homeschooling during the pandemic. They decide that they don't want to be a part of the society, so they sort of, as much as possible, withdraw. Especially, it's not totally possible. You still use the grocery store. Your kids still have friends who go to public school, that kind of stuff. But they actively choose to try and put distance between them and what are signs of society's collapse.
Yeah, well, it's what you said, Tim, about in the beginning about having everything, and the convenience culture has evolved to the point where we don't need human relationships. We have everything we need. You know, we don't need, relationships to gratify our sexual urges, which is very innate in us. We have pornography. We don't need to make our own food. We have Uber Eats, and we just have grocery stores where we pick it off the shelves. We don't have danger to make us need physical fitness and endurance and, fighting off dangers. We literally don't need each other anymore, and that is killing us.
Dude. You want to hear something really crazy? I make millions of dollars complaining about bullshit on the internet. And I am astounded every single day because I grew up in a place where it was like, if you don't work, you don't eat. And I'm in the city. It's like I would play guitar in the subway when I'm basically borderline homeless because I'm like, I'm going to find a way to make money. Otherwise, I'm not eating. And that's what you had to do. And now I'm at a point where it's like, turn the camera on, complain, people listen, and you make money doing it. I'm not saying that to be self-deprecating for the most part. I'm saying we have as a society gotten to the point where there are people who don't actually work and they live like kings. This is the craziest thing. Like we're all kings now. This is not feasible in the long run. It is not a viable way for human society to function. That right now there are people whose hands are covered their hands are calloused. And every day they're lifting things, they're constructing things, and they make substantially less than a BuzzFeed writer. There is a person who works at BuzzFeed. Well, not anymore. They're replacing it with AI, which is going to get even worse, I guess. Or maybe better. Maybe people will be forced to start working again. But there are people who work in the corporate press who show up to work in the morning and they're like, what should we do today? You can call Trump a Nazi. And they're like, okay, I'll do that. And then they make $90,000 a year. Meanwhile, people at home listening are like, I drove a car around for 12 hours, doing deliveries, and I made $50 to $100. How can a society function when you have working class, actual working class people who work, and then you have the elite ruling class and corporate press that do nothing and extract 10 times the value from the system? Now that is a recipe for disaster, in my opinion. That can't sustain itself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about animosity, like that'll fuel animosity, Tim.
And I think that some of the things we mentioned aren't accessible to the people who are making, $50 to $100 a day. The BuzzFeed writer can spend all day on the internet and can get Uber Eats and whatever else. But if you live in a rural community and you don't have the budget for that, you are forced to interact with your neighbors and your world a little bit more. And I think that is one of the reasons it's so separate. I know I mentioned it a couple times, but the CDC released their youth behavior study, and they found basically that teenage girls are really unhappy. The majority of teenage girls are very sad, very unhappy. Who are the most social creatures naturally on earth? Teenage girls. They look for community. All they want to do is talk to friends, but their society more and more is digital, right? Teens are on their phones, they're interacting on Snapchat, they are looking for gratification through likes on Instagram as opposed to in-person accomplishments. We are leading them into their own destruction, and we're just saying, no, it's great because we have comfort now and it's so nice, the internet.
I think it's funny that it's the wealthy trust fund lefties that think they're the oppressed working class. You know, there's like that viral video out of I think it was Seattle, where a bunch of anti-Amazon protesters are, you know, leftists are protesting. And then the actual Amazon workers show up in hard hats and like vests and they start shouting them down. Like the actual working class guy is like a 35-year-old white dude named John who voted for Trump, not a, you know, 30-year-old hipster named Devlin who, you know, took feminist basket weaving at college. But they think they're working class and they live in cities. Their lives are funded by, this is the craziest thing to me about how the system works. College loans. Right now, everyone's screaming like, Joe Biden, pay off our loans. Oh no, the loan forgiveness. And you've got these protesters, these unions, and they're screaming, being like, they need to forgive student loans. And I'm like, it's just crazy to me that these hipster leftist types literally do no work, get free money from these institutions, then demand everyone else eat the cost and pay for their entitled lives. And there's a dude out there right now who's listening to this show at work, lifting a heavy box and his back hurts, and he's thinking, yep.
But the thing is, they don't think that they're the working class. They're Leninists, and they think that they're the vanguard. They think that they really do. They're Marxist Leninists. That's the basis of their opinion. They're the ones that are the bourgeois.
They're the bourgeois, yeah.
Yeah, they're the bourgeois that are gonna sweep the proletariat through the revolution into the new society, into the social society. That's exactly what they think. Everyone that's at Media Matters thinks that they're a member of the vanguard. They're all going to get the bullet if they get what they want, because that's what the commies do.
The communists purged the intelligentsia that fomented the revolution in the first place.
Yeah, liberals get the bullet too, so they're done. But
the communists know who's a real risk: the working class guy or the revolutionary. The revolutionary. Yeah. So once the revolution happens, the revolutionaries turn on each other. But I got an idea. Here's what we should do. We should do one of those like panel discussions that you see on the internet every so often, where they'll get like, you know, 2 layers of chairs, and then have people all sit there and like a person ask them all questions. And I just want to get like working class union guys from Western Maryland and West Virginia, and then college hipster leftists, and then just be like, let me ask you guys some questions. Who did you vote for? And then watch all the working class guys be like, oh yeah, I work in a factory. I work in a steel mill. I voted for Trump. And then the college student's going to be like, but you're working class. Why are you voting for Trump? I voted for Biden. It's like, you have no idea our problems, dude.
But this is the fundamental difference between the left and the right. The left bases their life around rights, where the right bases their life around obligations. And that's what the left does, is they say you have all of these rights, and if you vote for me, I will give them to you. And the right thinks, I don't have rights. The only rights I have is the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I have an obligation to my family. I have an obligation to God. I have an obligation to my country.
I would say the left promises entitlements. They would say things like, you deserve this. This is yours.
But they frame it as rights. You have a right to healthcare. You have a right to food. You have a right to this wage. You have a right to everything. 100 years ago, we only had those 3 rights: the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And you needed to build. You needed to farm. You needed to fight. And because we don't have the need to do all those things, they can come up with all these rights and then again say, you have these rights, and if you vote for me, I will give them to you. I will give you all of your desires.
But
just
that's
vote for me.
That again comes back to the fact that they're not liberals. They're progressives. They believe that they don't believe in rights at all. They don't believe in
it's just jargon
rights.
To them.
The rights are what the government gives to people, and that's all they believe.
Part of me really would love it if the system just stopped for 1 month. Just 1 month. But I know the reality is a lot of people would die. And I don't want that to happen. I just want these purple hair, shaved head leftists who cry because someone misgendered them. I just want them to understand a little bit what hard work really is and how hard life really is for other people. Because while these people are at Starbucks crying because someone misgendered them, there is a 12-year-old kid mining cobalt with his teeth falling out of his face who's doing the work to make sure they can have their espresso machine. And they have no idea. These people exemplify capital city in the Hunger Games so perfectly. They don't realize that they watch these movies and they're like, I'm Katniss. And it's like, no, you're that capital city crazy haired lady drinking Ipecac and barfing to eat more food at your party, not realizing other people are being beaten and enslaved so they can sustain your way of life.
I think that there are other people too, even in these colleges. One of my good friends growing up, or that I went to high school with, put himself through college while working as an EMT full time, and he got his degree and he kept going. Like, he's one of the hardest working people I know. And I think if anyone in his college had been like, I'm working class too, he would have laughed, but he wouldn't have said anything because he doesn't need to prove himself to them. I think that the people who have never been asked to consider, like, they take on student loan debt knowing that someone in their family will be able to help them pay it off, or they don't need to think about it. They are resigned to not being responsible for the consequences of their actions. And then when eventually they're put in a position where they have to act with responsibility or to meet their obligations, they don't want to do it anymore.
This is the problem, though. There's probably conservative types with calloused hands sit there with a smile on their face, looking at the hippie liberal, being like, if only they knew, man, the whiny little bitches. And they don't say anything. And it's because they're hardened and they're not fazed by the complaints of these people. But the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So these lunatic leftists go around smashing things and screaming, and then feckless politicians are like, just give them whatever they want. They're yelling in my ears.
Yeah.
I saw a TikTok the other day. Some kid was literally saying, why do I have to work just to live?
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like,
kidding,
really?
Oxidization. That's what I say. Oxidization. I'll try and get it to the root for you, dude.
Yeah.
It's called entropy. That's it. Your body is ceasing to exist without being sustained by energy. And you have to get it from somewhere. Ain't nobody gonna do it for you.
It's amazing that people think that.
There was a meme that went around for a while that was like, I blame my parents for this. I didn't ask to be born, so I didn't ask to like pay for all this. And you want to be like, so you'd rather be dead? Like, what?
That's
what
why
are
they're
you
for
saying?
abortion.
Yeah, they are for abortion. They're also saying that like they should never have to assume responsibility, right? Like, life is a gift, and being able to live life on Earth is a blessing. And so therefore, like, don't look at your parents and be like, how could you do this to me? How could you bring me on, like, into this world? Be grateful and become mature and accept your responsibilities in life.
I forget
Go ahead.
I forget the philosopher's name, but he's like, this is not some kind of new thing. There was a philosopher hundreds of years ago talking about the flungness of existence, the way that you kind of just are tossed into reality. Like, that's part of the human condition. Shut the hell up and quit whining.
No, it pisses me off when I go online and I see people my age and they're like, oh, I had such a hard day at school. Like, I just need to unwind. It's like, what do you mean unwind? You read books for 6 hours. Unwind for what? Can you imagine like talking to a 50-year-old guy that's been working on the docks in the 60s? He comes home and you're like, how was your day? Like, how are you feeling? He'd look at you and he'd go, what do you mean, how am I feeling? I need to put food on the table. What do you mean? I got to get up in 8 hours. Are you kidding me? But we have this sense of entitlement in my generation that, yeah, you need to have your relaxation time. You need to have your vacation time. You need to have a little cookie at the end of your meal. You need a little sweetness. It's like, no. You have obligations to, again, your God, country, and your family. And the left has stripped all those things away and said, you have all these rights. The government is your daddy. And it's left everybody sad, depressed, anxious. Like, obligation and working for people outside of yourself, working for a higher power, working for things, anything outside of yourself. That's what gives you fulfillment. That's what gives you gratitude. That's what gives you a meaningful life.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.